Okay. It is Devil's Night. Annually, this is the night before Halloween. And tonight, I will be experiencing the second to last night of Halloween Horror Nights 26. Tomorrow is Halloween, so it makes sense that we end on this. First off, ever since I finally got to see The Exorcist on the big screen a couple years ago, I wanted this to be a versus, but I didn't know what to put it against. And we had something else in mind, but then you thought about it and like, I don't know, I'm not sure. We had it booked tentatively for this month. God, what a long day. And we were going to do that, but then you got a hold of me and said, hey, this fits better.
It was while I was preparing this too.
Yeah, that makes
sense. I had it set up with he wanted it to be the last exorcism, which I don't know, for some reason, I mean, it does make sense, but for some reason, I just didn't feel like
there was something better.
They just feel so different.
Right.
And yeah, this just kind of occurred to me.
So, on the day before Halloween, we're going to find out what happens when the Exorcist battles the Omen. AJ, good luck.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
in more ways than one, good luck.
We'll do this as fast as we can, so we're not cursed or anything.
I've already went to the house several times by the time this video is airing, so I'm probably already cursed, so...
Okay. We'll start with, why couldn't this be the sequel or something? Nobody gives a shit about James Earl Jones and his flies, or whatever the fuck that movie was.
That's the reason why you didn't do the sequels.
Well, the third one's kind of cool with George C. Scott. It's got Brad Dourif and that awesome jump scare with the giant scissors or whatever the fuck.
Which is funny you bring up Brad Dourif because of last week's verses. So yeah, makes sense.
So we're gonna go ahead and start with The Exorcist because I pretty much already did. And the thing about it is it does. Actually, it depends on which one you're watching.
Okay.
Because for the longest time, I had only seen the extended version.
Right.
And I was, even when we went to see it a couple years ago, I was afraid we were going to be late for Rosemary's Baby was playing right after it. Yep. We were going to go to that, and I was afraid of being late. Because if it had been the extended version, we were going to be a little late. Mm-hmm. And so I asked the dude there, and he didn't fucking know.
Of course he didn't know.
He's like, well, I'm going to... Because the website said 123 minutes.
Right.
Which is the theatrical version. The uncut one's like 218. And the big thing is the opening is different in the extended version. So I was like I said, like as soon as it starts, we're gonna know which one it is. And they fucking played the extended version.
They certainly did, and we were late for Rosemary's Baby.
Yes. But when you're watching the, I feel like. I'm not a big fan of the extended version because, honestly, the theatrical cut of the movie kind of feels like an extended version. Well, that's just the thing. But when this version starts, the normal one, it's kind of immediately unsettling because for a while we don't really know what's up because it's Max von Sydow and he's in just. You know, like the desert area and all that stuff. And he finds the little sculpture of sorts, and the music kicks in, so we know this is something fucking major, and the only way we know anything at all is the horrified look on his face, and what the score is telling us how we should feel about this. And it's there's like really unsavory looking characters just scattered throughout those scenes. And just the way the sun looks, everything about it just feels really, really eerie. But we're not quite sure what's going on. And I think that adds like a whole lot to it. The fact that we don't know what exactly we're supposed to be scared of right now. And there's the moment where like the clock just stops entirely. But it's his sense, that sense of fear that we can sense in him, is kind of what really drives the scene. And then we just cut. And we're introduced to the MacNeils and Jason Miller. And it kind of feels like we're in a different movie until it all comes back around. I will say that The Exorcist never quite hit me as effectively as it has many people. I don't know if it's because I was probably 14 or 15 or something. And like, it was one of those nights where like I had a friend over and me and my brother had rented it and we were all... And it's... the thing that kind of caught me off guard is the fact that typically, just in structure in general, horror, like I was talking about, what The Last House on the Left kind of went against, is that typically horror movies start slow. Because you need those build-ups before you get to the really big scares for them to really, really pay off. But The Exorcist is very slow. In a way that's okay. Typically in this case, I'd be very much giving credit to a horror movie for being so slow and really, really going on that build-up. And it's not like nothing's happening. There's stuff scattered throughout that's either going to come back or is its own little kind of creepy little moment. Like there's the moment with well, there are multiple moments where she just keeps hearing noise in the ceiling, and we don't really know what it is. And then there's Regan with the Ouija board and Captain Howdy. And it's innocent in one way, but when you know you're in a movie like The Exorcist, the name Captain Howdy is creepy as fuck. But we have this whole other plot going on with Jason Miller losing his faith and tending to his mother, which of course is absolutely crucial, completely and totally crucial to this movie. But those scenes are kind of a drag. Because they're kind of like, I know exactly why they're in there. And they're extremely important to the story. And the movie would not be what it is in the final moments without these scenes and without establishing this stuff. But man, some of those scenes are a chore. They really are. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's anything against Jason Miller's performance. Because he is very good here. And he got an Oscar nomination as well. Some of which feel is in the wrong category. He got him for supporting, but he's quite a crucial character throughout the whole movie. But those kind of portions of the movie when we're kind of going into it and establishing this character never really quite grabbed me. Even though they do make scenes later on so much more powerful because you know those scenes. So it's kind of a hard thing to really criticize or try to pick apart. I do feel like, though, maybe... I think the problem is that I don't feel like it should take as much time as it does to establish the points that it needs to establish. But those things that are going to come back later and establish his character in general. The scenes building up the relationship between Ellen Burstyn and Regan are fine. I don't necessarily find those to be too much of a problem. I mean, sometimes they're probably sickeningly sweet, but obviously they're sickeningly sweet because of the insane contrast we're gonna have later. And it is, while we're on the subject of Regan, actually, I would like to talk about the fact that, while it's always her name, I think half the people that even know this character don't even realize her name is Regan. They just call her Linda Blair. And she's always been associated with this role since it happened. And to the point that she, got all the death threats and all that stuff. And it's a role that is just completely, in her now, in her life forever now. And like I said, a lot of people just call the character by her real name. Because she and the character are so much one when it comes to audiences. But it seems like lately there's been this case of Blair's performance not really is getting much of the credit when people learn about Mercedes McCambridge's involvement. Mercedes McCambridge, the Oscar-winning actress that does the voice of the demon. And a lot of people think that, once that kind of really started registering with audiences, they started thinking and saying, well, maybe it's much more McAndrew's performance that makes it scary and less Linda Blair's. And they kind of stopped giving Linda Blair as much credit as she was initially getting. When she, did I mention this already? She also scored an Oscar nomination, as did Ellen Burstyn. It's so weird how well this movie did Oscar-wise, but I'll go into that in a second. Where it almost feels like Linda Blair, after a while, is just kind of a puppet for the Mercedes McCambridge performance. But I think people get so hung up on that they kind of stop realizing that you can't really do one without the other, and the performance is really, really brought to life, not just through the voice. I'm not taking anything away from the voice work at all. But, like, apparently she, like, did a whole lot of stuff to fuck up her voice, and she had herself restrained to a chair while she did the voice work, so it all comes off the way that it does. And apparently Friedkin said that watching her perform this scared the holy shit out of him for real. But the thing about it, though, is that it's all about Linda Blair's physicality and her expressions, and a lot of times the way she uses her eyes, too, before they go, like, completely demonic. And I feel like that definitely, like, at first she got all the credit, and now I feel like she's starting to not get enough credit for what she brought to it. Because it's definitely still her performance, even though she's dubbed over after a while by Mercedes McCambridge, who is also, does, like her voice work alone could probably be considered one of the scariest performances in horror movie history, and it's just voice work. Which says something in itself. And as I was saying, there are some differences in the extended version, obviously because it's like 20 minutes longer. But there's one particular scene that I always associated with this movie that it took me forever to realize is only in the extended version. Which is interesting to me also because of how much that scene is talked about when this movie gets brought up. It's kind of weird to look back and think that it's only in the extended version, so it makes me wonder just how so many people know about it. Probably because of the impression that it makes. I will build this up no longer. That fucking goddamn spider walk.
Yes.
I understand how it could look. Well, okay, in general with this movie, it was considered like one of the scariest things of all time, and it's still like at the top of lists as the scariest movie of all time. Mm-hmm. But it's also quite well known for many aspects of it to be really dated. Like, while some of the things in this movie are still quite horrifying, there are some things back in the day that may not have been very funny that people might find hilarious now. Like the whole, like, Regan, flopping on the bed and shit. I think when we saw it in theaters, that got a laugh. And I can understand, even if somebody were to see the spider walk and think that that was cheesy. Good Christ. I wish I had never seen that. I sure as shit wish I'd never seen it in a theater.
Imagine seeing that in person, though.
That was, well, apparently it was a contortionist on wires.
Right.
So when you think about it that way, it's like, well, okay. Because I guess the reason he cut it out is because you could see the wires, but then by the time the extended cut came around, they could digitally remove them, and that's why it's only in the extended cut. But yeah, that was the thing. Well, the movie, the extended version is like 2 hours and 18 minutes. That's long. And honestly, being late for Rosemary's Baby really wasn't even my problem. The thing that stressed me out about us getting the extended version when we saw it in theaters was I knew I was going to see a fucking spider walk again. That was like the one reason I did not want it to be the extended version. I know I could just turn away, but to be quite honest with you, I can never exactly remember when it is. It always fucking sneaks up on me. It's a scene where they're just fucking standing around talking, and then she just fucking... And it's the fucking score, too. It's like the score is playing the xylophone on your fucking spinal cord. God. I don't want to talk about the spider walk anymore. Get it away from me.
Well, like I said, there's a very good possibility. I have experienced it in person numerous times throughout this month.
And another thing that's in the, there's a scene of it, or a scene or two of it, in the regular version, but more so in the extended versions, the subliminal images.
Yes.
When they put like Pazuzu's face in there, to the point that a lot of time when he goes by, you can't even really see it. Like you have to really, really be looking for it. But there is like the one case with his mom in the regular version where you can see it pretty clearly. Where he's got kind of like it's the movie oh fuck, what is it called? I've seen the thing. It's Onibaba, I think it's called. I hope I'm saying that right. The one with the women that kill samurai and steal their shit, and they come across the one that's wearing like the really freaky mask. That mask in that movie is, I want to say it's Japanese. Oh yeah. It's, and that's kind of where he got the image for the face. I also get serious Klaus Kinski vibes when I see that face. And it is very, very jarring and freaky. And it's like, it is one thing where you can say it's more effective when you don't have a face or anything like that. But I feel like Friedkin knew what he was doing, and it's just as effective when you do have a face to go with it, but it's a face that you've only seen in a really quick flash. So even then, you still don't have quite a grip on it. You don't still feel like you're facing something head on when you see an image that quickly. So when you hear the voice, there's still definitely something that's kind of keeping you from, really feeling like you know exactly what you're up against. And then also going on the dated aspects of it was that there was something. Even so, even today, it still can get a reaction out of you. But you got to think about the fact of people watching this in 1973 and witnessing the vulgarity. Mm-hmm. The crucifix scene, like, what's he saying? Jesus fucks you, or something, and saying, and like putting her face in it, and your mother sucks cocks in hell, and your cunting daughter. It's like, in 1973, this made people's fucking heads explode.
Right.
And it was very, very shocking at the time, and just really added to that overall, like, what you were witnessing and stuff like that was shocking in its own way, but the vulgarity just added a whole other shocking layer to people. They just had no idea just how to fathom what they were witnessing, seeing all this. Another thing I like that the movie does also is the way it puts in, obviously there's a lot of doubt from the characters for a long time about whether or not she's actually possessed. And I like that they actually put those elements in there that kind of combat the supernatural elements. Where it's, Lee J. Cobb is the guy that's investigating all this. And how he's, like, his investigation in general makes it feel more like something, more real is afoot here. But then there is the moments when they're talking about doing an exorcism, and the dude actually tells them a lot of exorcisms are just the power of suggestion, and it's all in people's heads. And the whole thing that the doubt that the tap water brings in, when he's throwing the water on her, she's screaming that it burns, and then he reveals later that wasn't holy water, and that makes it look like it's Regan faking something. So I really like how they put it never fully goes into the supernatural until the very, very end when we're absolutely positively sure. So I really like that they put those elements in there to kind of, there's a certain balance there for a while and an uncertainty until we get to those big moments. And yeah, as I was saying, it's very weird to me just how big of an Oscar movie this is. Nominated for Best Picture, Director, 3 acting nominations. I believe it was the first horror movie legitimately nominated for Picture. And it actually even went on to win Adapted Screenplay. The dude that wrote the book adapted the screenplay himself and won an Oscar for it. So that's always, even today, like, it's had so much time to register. Even every time I watch this movie, it just blows my mind. This was a huge Oscar movie That's so weird to me, even now. Some of the stuff we've seen get nominated since, still, it just feels very... Yeah. Obviously, it's a movie with a lot of urban legends surrounding it, as we were talking about. Like, all the curses and all that. The one I always heard was, like, one of the premieres or a showing or something. The theater was next to a church, and there was a thunderstorm, and, like, the church got struck by lightning, and the steeple fell and went through the theater ceiling. So, while people were in the theater watching The Exorcist, suddenly a giant cross just breaks through the ceiling. I've never been totally sure if I believe that, but that's kind of the one I've always heard about. And it was basically just one of those movies where it kind of changed things when it came out. Because there was... it was basically one of the first cases of the hype machine. Where, like, before it came out, everybody was talking it up, and how when people went to see it, they were puking, or they were fainting, or it was making people go insane watching it. And people, like, started to line up, like, all the way around for this. It was basically like a ride at a theme park or something, where you just hear just how crazy it is and how much it fucks you up, and so people line up to go over and over again. I actually heard, apparently, this was around the time of the Watergate thing, and this movie was so fucking huge that, Watergate news started to take a backseat to it, because of the impact it was having on a mass audience. And it really just kind of turned into this thing of basically showing what you can show and what you can't. Like, after this movie came out, basically everybody came to the conclusion of, is there anything you cannot show? And so, because the X rating was still floating around. But this was just out there for everyone, with all that hype behind it. And, so, yeah, like I said, it never really had as big of an impact on me as it did. I don't know if it was that hype machine or what it was, but I mean, that's not to take away from the fact that the exorcism itself is like a really, really huge moment. Not just when you're watching it, but in movie history. And it's been imitated forever. That might be the endless imitations may water it down as well. That have happened since. Imitations, parodies, anything of the like. But yeah, I mean, I don't discredit its reputation by any means. Like, I watch and I totally see why people think this is one of the most insane, scariest, craziest things they've ever seen. So, yeah, it just never really... Yeah, it's not even a movie I've seen that many times. It's just... Like I said, I think just that first half or so has such trouble grabbing me that... I don't know. I feel fine towards it. I feel, after it's over, I feel much stronger about it than I do when I, think back on it. But, still, its reputation is definitely still holding up after all this, and, nobody can really take that away, regardless.
And I'm glad we get the opportunity to have it at Halloween Horror Nights, because it's really interesting to be able to walk through that movie and be able to have that right in front of your eyes.
Oh, God.
You'd love it. I'm sure you would. That room full of nothing but puke and...
That's nice.
Yeah. I'm excited.
So we move on to the Omen.
Yes.
Where yet another child may or may not be linked to the devil or hell in general, or demons, or whatever you might have.
Right.
And of course, the movie begins the night Damien is born. Wouldn't you guess it? On June 6th at 6 a.m. Yes. And I remember catching this on TV when I was younger. And I had just heard about it. I didn't really know what it was. I just knew basically its title and that people thought it was terrifying. And it definitely does have those moments in the first. It definitely, a lot of its most memorable moments are kind of in its first half. Like the nanny hanging herself, obviously, is a much quoted scene and much referenced scene. And I love that it's very... I don't know. It's kind of a question of how well you know the movie before you go into it in regards to how innocent Damien seems at first. Because the thing that could really jar you about the nanny hanging herself is how innocent the scene seems prior to that, before it happens right then and there. Because we're at his birthday party, and there's like a merry-go-round, and there's like kids with cotton candy, and there's like horses, and it's just this really, really happy place for children to be innocent and have fun.
Right.
But then again, you see Damien in his creepy little suit, and it's just a question of what you know and how you feel about it going in, to where, like, if you're too familiar with Damien, or if you're creeped out by a suit like I was, there's really no surprise something sinister happens immediately. And then there is the, because then we go into the whole, like when he goes to the zoo and he scares away, you know, the giraffes and all the animals freak out. I was never really scared of it when I was younger, but I remember being very, very intrigued by it. It's really, like, if you don't really know too much about it, there's a really nice mysterious quality it has going on there for a while. Like, the moment when they're pulling up to the church and he starts to freak out, which is also a scene that uses the score really well, the Oscar-winning score. And it's really, really unsettling, that scene with the score and then the way they pull up to the church and how it's building and building until he eventually freaks out. It'll get to your nerves in kind of a good horror-y way. But then there is and the whole thing about the dog, how that's a mystery in the movie for a long time, where the dogs just kind of hang around and just clearly have something sinister about them, but they just stand at a distance and growl. And for a while, we don't know what their purpose is. And then Mrs. Baylock starts bringing the fucking thing in the house. Mrs. Baylock's creepy ass. Another one of those cases where you just kind of look at this person and you know that there's something very sinister, especially since they immediately come to the conclusion that nobody hired her. She just showed up. She just materialized. And she gives some bullshit about being from the agency, but it's really creepy to think about where she really came from. It's really hard to say. And there is, and we, you know, meet assorted characters. David Warner's photographer is a really good character. That whole thing, R.L. Stine, for instance, knows all about this, but every time I watch this, I feel like, the subplot with David Warner, in regard to, I guess it wouldn't be subplot, but the other thing we have going on with David Warner, where he's, whenever he develops his pictures, the negatives always kind of have a hint, like a shadow, that basically shows us how this person's going to die. That could basically be the plot of its own horror movie.
Yeah.
And then we have the priest, which is he's that character. He's the crazy Ralph. He's the character that's there to basically make all the warnings, but everybody thinks he's crazy, so nobody listens to him. And then there's the really good scene when he actually, it seems like a normal scene, but it's actually the aftermath of it that makes it a really good scene, and that is when the storm starts to whip up. The storm that as soon as it starts, we know is the storm that he's going to die in. And I really like, it's really kind of creepy in a way when he goes through the storm and he goes up to the church, and as we saw in the picture, he is eventually impaled. But the way that as soon as he dies, the storm stops immediately and the sky turns blue. And it's like the storm was strictly there just to kill him. I always thought that was really effective, the way that was handled. Because speaking of it being effectively handled, Richard Donner is the director, which I sometimes forget because this seems so out of his normal filmography. Because Richard Donner, he gave us The Goonies and Lethal Weapon and Lady Hawk and Superman. The Omen really sticks out in that lineup. And he actually does handle it pretty well. I read somewhere something really funny where obviously if gore is going to happen, or gore is going to happen, audiences tend to shield their eyes if that's not if that's the way they react to it. So the way he shot David Warner's decapitation was to show his head going into the air multiple times, like get multiple angles of it and show it multiple times and all that, so that when people would look away, knowing he was about to be decapitated, by the time they took the time to look back, his head would still be in the air. I think that's a nice little... That's a way to kind of make your presence known as the director to get to the audience like that. And the way the cemetery is really, like, cemeteries are creepy in general, but the cemetery in this movie, just the way it's shot and the setting of it, is just really, really memorably creepy. Because like David Lean's Great Expectations, you can have really beautifully shot cemeteries that have kind of an eeriness about them, but there's still something beautiful about it. This cemetery is just straight up frightening. I would... and there's also... the way he got the last shot was really good, too. To my understanding, the way I read it was... he went up to the kid that played Damien and basically used reverse psychology, where Damien's supposed to just kind of look at the camera, but he ends up doing that smile. And Richard Donner basically told him, whatever you do, don't laugh. Like, do not laugh when I am filming you right now. Just... that's the last thing you want to do. Which, of course, is going to make him want to laugh. So, that really, really creepy shot that we know, when Damien turns to the camera and does that smile, it's the kid just trying not to laugh. But it just looks really, really effectively exactly what it's supposed to look like within the confines of the movie. Not to mention being a ballsy enough story to kill both Gregory Peck and Leigh Remick. Especially killing her off so... I mean, we think they're going to kill her off early, and then she survives, and they still end up doing it. Back then probably would have been quite surprising, given the type of character that she plays. And killing Peck off, too. That's fucking Atticus Finch they're killing, to save the son of the devil, and let him reign on for 2 more movies. And eventually turn into Sam Neill. So yes, The Omen definitely has some things going for it. Some very effective and memorable scenes. But overall, I don't know that it has the gripping quality that The Exorcist does in its last minutes. Like, I'd say it's more intriguing as a story than what the first half of The Exorcist is. But the second half of The Exorcist reaches so many high heights. And The Omen kind of peaks when it gets a lot of its really good scenes in the first half. It's really hard to say, because it kind of evens out that way. But if I had to say, like, on a technical level, what the best of these is, I think it's very clearly the one that was nominated for, like, 1 billion Oscars.
Yes.
I think it got, like, at least 10 nominations or something. Wow. It won another one apart from Screenplay. I want to say it was Sound, but I'm not positive.
That makes sense.
Don't quote me on that, but I think
yeah.
so. So, yeah. I was never really terrified of either of them, but they're definitely well made, especially The Exorcist, and it's not hard to see why they're kind of a staple in the genre. So, yeah.
One more verses in the books, and that's going to end our horror themed for 2016. Next week, we're going to get a little bit presidential. Because it's election day, well, it's closest to it, so...
God, it's that one already.
Yeah, it is. But don't forget, that's a long way away if you want to go realize where we are right now. So, one last night of Halloween Horror Nights tomorrow. Tonight is our last meetup, actually. We're doing Twosome, and then we're going to the parks, and we're doing Horror Nights, and this is our Bill and Ted meetup. We're doing the first and last showings of Bill and Ted, so if you want to partake, RSVP, or send me a message on Twitter, @Popcast Network. Check out our Zazzle store with all the various Halloween Horror Nights 26 inspired merchandise available at Popcast Network, and also Facebook fan page at Popcast Network. So that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
That's it.